CNN has learned that U.S. Air Force fighter jets intercepted two Russian bombers off the coast of Alaska. The U.S. says the intercept took place in international airspace yesterday. They say it was safe and professional. Illinois Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He's joining us from Ottawa, Illinois, serves in the U.S. Air Force right now. The reserve served in Iraq and Afghanistan. What do you make of this development? A statement from the North American Command saying two Russian Tu-95 Bear bombers were intercepted off the coast of Alaska on Monday by two U.S. F-22 fighter jets. The fighter jets were scrambled by NORAD. The intercept took place in international airspace. Walk us through what all this means, especially at such a sensitive time right now, Congressman.
Well, so this is basically, I hate to admit it, I hate to say it, but it's almost a rejuvenation of the Cold War. And, not where we have thousands of nukes pointed at each other on a hair trigger, but this is a show of force by the Russians to show they're still here, they're still operating. This is what they used to do back in the day. And there's a lot of benefits to them to doing it. They can see what our air defenses do. They can map out how our intercepts occur. This is the Russians trying to bare their teeth, trying to show their teeth. And I think the thing that Americans need to keep in mind is, look, Russia is an adversary. It's an adversary we need to be very concerned about and pushing them back in areas. But the Russian military is totally incapable compared to the United States military. This is not like it was back in the Cold War where you have equally matched forces.
So what you're suggesting, Congressman, and you serve in the U.S. Air Force, this was not a mistake by those Russian pilots of those two Tu-95 Bear bombers that they inadvertently got pretty close to the Alaska coastline in international waters. This was some sort of deliberate Russian provocation. Is that what you're saying to test the U.S. ability to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's if this was a mistake, they were way off and they had huge navigational failures, but I'm sure it was not a mistake. This was an attempt to come up as close as they could to our international border to see what our reaction would be, to show Americans that the Russians are still there and operating. It's like when we see Russian, MiGs buzz our destroyers in the ocean and buzz our carriers. This is part of their show of force. And it's understandable to an extent that this used to happen during the Cold War, but this is like a rejuvenation from their end of the Cold War. And what I worry about is somebody somewhere, a pilot on their side, is going to make a mistake, get too close, and we'll end up with a bit of a shooting conflict, which we do not want.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, and it comes at a very tense time internationally as far as national security is concerned. North Korea, as you know, the Vice President Mike Pence says that it's encouraging that North Korea appears to be, quote, getting the message about stopping its nuclear threats, its nuclear activities. The Vice President says all options are on the table when it comes to North Korea. What does that mean to you? Realistically, what are those options?
Well, I think the last option, but an option before a North Korea marries a nuclear warhead to a missile that can reach the United States, the one right before that, the next to the worst option, is a preemptive strike against their nuclear facilities. And we know that's going to probably lead to a broader war, so we don't want to get there. But this is a really complicated maneuver going on. So you have three instruments of power that the U.S. has at play. You have an economic, a military, and a diplomatic instrument of power. In order to have a credible diplomacy with an adversary, you have to back that up with the threat, a credible threat of military force, as well as the ability to use your economic instrument of power. That's where you can sanction banks in China that do business with North Korea. That's where you can compel the Chinese through kind of give and take on some of these economic issues to say it is in your interest to rein in North Korea. It's in your economic interest to do it. So this is a very complicated dance of international foreign policy at play, but I think this is the right move. And I know it's scary and it's getting a lot of attention, but the scariest thing is we wake up and find out that North Korea has the ability to strike America with nukes.
One final question before I let you go, totally unrelated to all the national security threats that are out there. Today's tax day here in the United States. We have yet to see, as you well know, President Trump's tax returns for any, let alone this year, recent years. The White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, said yesterday that he could not say if the president would ever release those tax returns. Is that distracting from issues like tax reform? He says a major issue on his agenda is major tax cuts, tax reform in the House. Where do you stand as far as the president releasing his tax returns?
Well, I think he should. You know, we have a tradition in this country of seeing what the interest, the business interest, the financial interest of the person leading the free world is. And I think this has been a distraction to him. The vast majority of Americans want him released, even though it doesn't rank necessarily in their highest priority area. I think it would be to the president to benefit to release him, and I think as the American people, we want to see that. So I would call on him to release them, and I think it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, yesterday I spoke with one of your Republican colleagues, Congressman Ted Yoho. He agrees with you. He thinks it's the right thing to do as well. So not just Democrats criticizing the president on this, but increasingly Republicans as well. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, Wolf.